Have you ever caught yourself saying, this is something that I really, really want, and I just can't seem to get there? Or you set goals and then they just don't quite turn out the way that you want them to, or the way that you think that they should. Really, self-sabotage can come in so many different forms. So in this episode 8 of the NeuroCoach podcast, we are going to dive into what is self-sabotage? How do you know that that is what you're facing, and what to do when it comes up? Life is full of difficult questions, experiences that leave you asking more questions and offer very little direction. You need a way to tap into your potential and have a roadmap to become the best version of yourself. Welcome to the NeuroCoach podcast. My name is Trisha Peterson, and this is where we go below the surface into your subconscious to rewire the brain and finally align yourself with the person that God designed you to be. The only thing that you're missing right now is an internal connection between today's thoughts and tomorrow's outcome. So get excited. This one simple question could help you find the missing piece that you always knew you needed, but didn't know how to find. Well, hello. I am thrilled to be here with you today because we are going to talk about something that I unfortunately have had a lot of experience with. You know, there are some things that you can learn through the textbook. You can go to school, you can learn about things, but you don't really understand them until you experience it yourself. And once you start to experience it, now all of that information that you gathered really starts to make sense. And that is, for me, something that I have had to experience over the last several years, looking into this self-sabotage. And it's something that I am constantly aware of because it can be so damaging when you don't have all the things in place to protect you from the sabotage that happens within our own brain. So before we jump into what is it and what can you do, I wanted to remind you, we still are a new podcast, and there are a lot of people out there who have questions that they are searching for the answers to, and they don't know how to find them within themselves. So especially this episode, self-sabotage is everywhere. So if you know someone who can benefit from this, please do them a favor and help them be able to figure out what's going on so that they are able to create the life that they desire. So let's jump in. What is self-sabotage? Really, I see it in two main ways. And there's a lot of variations, but when we take all the details out and we get down to just what is that experience, right? We remove the perception of things. We take out the emotion from it, just like we did in the equation. When we take everything away, self-sabotage comes down to two different forms. The first one is we identify that goal, that thing that we want, and you work so hard to get it. You do everything that you can, and you end up falling short, right? You end up getting in your own way, or you just have so many things that came up on your plate. Like we have 100 million different excuses of why we didn't get our goal. But at the end of the day, you fall short and you didn't achieve the things that you set out to. So that's the first way. The second way that we experience self-sabotage is slightly less known and isn't always attributed to self-sabotage, okay? So you set a goal, you set a destination of where you want to be, and you are determined that no matter what, you're going to get that thing. And so you work towards it, and you stay up late, you do everything in your power, you're networking, you're doing all of these things just to help you get to that next marker, that end goal. And after everything, all of your hard work, it all pays off. and you are able to achieve that thing that you set out to get. But then, this is where the self-sabotage comes in. Maybe weeks later, months later, and sometimes even years later, you watch all of these things slip through your fingers. Everything that you worked so hard to achieve, all of a sudden is just gone. And then you're leaving yourself saying, oh my gosh, like I had it all. How did this happen? How am I here again? And we don't think of it as self-sabotage because we're able to see like, oh, well, the economy changed, or this person changed their behavior and now I couldn't achieve those things anymore, or it was financial and you just let all of that slip through your fingers. So we're going to dive into both of these scenarios as we keep going. But ultimately, self-sabotage boils down to you are currently experiencing something that's different than your desired outcome. How we get there sometimes is slightly different. Anytime you are experiencing anything other than your desired outcome, you can always track it back to some kind of self-sabotage, which is why it's so important that we start to look at this. Now, when we start talking about self-sabotage, people get really, I'm going to use the word defensive, because we don't want it to be our problem. If it's someone else's fault, then that means I'm not as bad as I could be if it was my fault. All of these things, if there's someone else's fault, if it's not my fault, then we have somewhere to cast the blame. So we want to know, well, is this me or is this an outside force? Is there really something that's keeping me from getting my goals, or is it just me? Now, when we talk about self-sabotage, it's funny how people get almost defensive, I'll say. They start to want to blame other people and circumstances, and, well, I couldn't control this, or, this thing and that thing happened, and we just kind of have to roll with the punches. And we want to put the blame on those outside forces and not take responsibility for our part and what we contributed to the situation. If you've ever read the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, it's an awesome, awesome book. It's one that I read with my kids every year. But he talks about how you are what you believe yourself to be. You will attract all the things into your life that are in alignment with where your subconscious is. So while there may be outside forces that contribute to what you are experiencing, ultimately it comes down to you. Everything that you face, you have brought into your circumstances in some way, shape, or form. And the sooner we can begin to accept responsibility that this undesired experience that I have right now in front of me, I contributed to this experience, whether it was through your thoughts or your feelings, or ultimately the things that you believe about yourself. We're always attracting those things to us. And so there's always some form of self-sabotage that is playing under the surface. So I wanted to go through 10 of the most common forms of self-sabotage and the things that people say to themselves when they don't always recognize that they are up against self-sabotage. So we're going to go through this list today because I think it's really important that we begin to identify self-sabotage. And then after we go through this list, we're going to talk about what can you do when you are facing these situations that are less than desirable. Okay. So the first one, when you have set a goal, we start to feel unmotivated to do whatever it is. This is probably fairly common. We start to say like, oh, I just don't want to. It's just so hard and I don't have the time, right? Or you make the time and something comes up and then you just aren't motivated. Maybe you have to work a little bit later than you wanted to, or you have to have a conversation with someone that is a little bit uncomfortable and we just don't want to. And we allow those feelings of not wanting to dictate how we behave because we're just unmotivated to do those things. We don't want to put ourselves in an uncomfortable situation. And so we don't do those things. So that's the first one. And that one really is probably the easiest to detect of just, I'm unmotivated. I don't want to. Okay. The second one that we blame for our circumstances or that we don't recognize as self-sabotage is you start to tell yourself that, oh my gosh, this is so important and I really need to get it right. This is where the perfectionist comes in, and we work and work and work at things so they're just right when we actually don't know if they're right or not until we go out there and we try it. We try it on and we get feedback from other people. Okay, so we tell ourselves this is so important, and we don't recognize that when we're trying to do a good job, that we're really sabotaging any progression that you could be making. All right, you make a commitment to yourself. You say, I am not going to spend that money, or I am going to lose weight. And then you just can't resist when there is a piece of cake in front of you. We shouldn't say cake because cake is not very tempting, at least for me. You have like an eclair, something that is really, really desirable. And you're like, oh my gosh, that is all I want. And so you go out and you spend money and you buy things that you don't really need. I was talking to a client the other day, and she's been really working on her financial situation. But she just needed some slippers. Well, then she conveniently forgot that she had bought these slippers and bought herself a second pair. And then she was like, wait a minute, why did I do that? She didn't recognize that she was self-sabotaging all along the way, that she just forgot that she had purchased these slippers. So we make a commitment to ourselves and then something happens and you just can't keep those commitments. You cannot resist those new gadgets that just came out or a sale that's happening. Okay. We don't keep commitments to ourselves, not because there's a shiny object or because, we need more slippers or more food in our house. We don't keep commitments to ourselves because of self-sabotage, because that commitment that you made to yourself, there is something that is out of alignment with your subconscious. And so you physically cannot keep those commitments to yourself. Okay. Another one. So this is number 4. You remind yourself, I'm just not in that stage of life. That dream that I really want to have, that is for when my kids are older. That is like when I have life figured out and I know what I'm doing. Okay. That's when I get those things when I'm done with school, or I can have those things when I'm married, or I can have those things when my kids are out of the house. We say, I'm just not in that stage of life, and that's okay. We don't recognize that that is a form of self-sabotage, that you literally can have anything that you desire right now. You don't have to wait till some undetermined time for you to be able to experience all of those things right now. You can have them all right now. There is not a stage of life that is appropriate when everyone is able to experience that level of happiness or that amount of money. All of those things happen when you decide that they're going to happen and you allow your subconscious to be in alignment with that. The 5th thing that I see people, as soon as I recognize that they are self-sabotaging, they will tell themselves, well, I'm not in control. Oh, I can't do that because I have little kids. I get that a lot when I open the doors for neuro coaching, and they say like, oh my gosh, I would love to come and learn how to be a neuro coach. But I've got little kids at home and I just don't have the time. And I am so strapped thin. Like all of these things. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. There's all of these factors that are outside of their control. That is self-sabotage because you are in control of what happens in your life. Yes, there are things that we can't always control. We can't predict happen because other people have choices outside of our own. But how you react to those things and how you show up, that is always within your control. So there are things that you can control. So as soon as people start to say, oh, I'm not in control of this experience, there is a form of self-sabotage there. And that is something that we are able to work through and process and get back in alignment to keep people in control. Number 6, this is one of the things that I hear a lot with brand new coaches, people who have already been through the training. They are a neuro coach and they know that what they're doing is so big. It's going to help so many people. And they get so excited about it. And as they start working towards creating their own practice and their own coaching business, that their dream is too big and they don't allow themselves the space to grow into it. So if they can't be like this person, if we can't be, if I can't have the business like so-and-so has, then why am I even trying? And they don't allow themselves the space to grow into their dreams. They feel like this is going to be so big and they need to be there now because they know the impact that it's going to create. So we allow our dreams to be too big, but don't allow ourselves the space to grow into what it could be. All right. Now, number 7, we rationalize our situation. What you're experiencing right now, it's not too bad. I mean, it could be worse, right? You could be living in Africa without fresh water and no internet at all. Our situation, it's not too bad, or in a relationship, people are like, oh, well, my relationships are really crappy, but they're not nearly as bad as that person. So really, I'm okay. I'm okay. Like, it's not like, I'm getting beaten to death or whatever. Like, there's all of these things. We begin to rationalize this situation isn't as bad as it could be. And so it's okay. And we rationalize why we are staying in places that we shouldn't, or we rationalize why we are not making the amount of money that you're capable of making. We rationalize why you're not achieving those things because it's not too bad. That's self-sabotage. Every time it's self-sabotage. All right. Now, number 8, you begin to doubt yourself. You had all of these dreams. Oh, maybe that's just too big. Maybe I need to scale back a little bit. If I just, try to not reach for something quite so big, then I'm going to be able to actually achieve those things. I just, I have to set my sights a little bit lower. Or you tell yourself things like, oh, I just can't achieve that. You begin to doubt what you're capable of. You doubt who you were meant to be and what you were put here to do. You doubt all of those things inside of you because there is something that is out of alignment within your subconscious. Number 9, I see this a lot. And this is one that people have a hard time recognizing that this is self-sabotaging behavior. There's never a light at the end of the tunnel. This is just how it is. This is how it's always been. This is what I am capable of doing, right? They'll say things like, we're Petersons, and that's how Petersons are. Like, that's how my grandparents were, and that's how their parents were. Like, this is just how we are. That goes a little bit deeper because now there's generational self-sabotage that you're accepting, and they're just negative about everything that happens in their life. They're always blaming someone else. They're always in that space where it never works out for them. And well, it's better to stay in the crappy known than work towards the unknown that could be a little bit better. Okay. So there's never light at the end of the tunnel. That is a self-sabotaging behavior. Now, the last one, I see a lot of moms out there. I see you. I know what happens. Being a mom of 5 children, I know exactly what happens. You come home and your house is so unorganized. You have piles everywhere. There's piles in the kitchen. There's piles in your bedroom. There's piles even in your children's room of books that need to be put away and things that need to happen. And you are so unorganized in your day that when it comes time to actually make progress towards your dream, you end up washing the dishes or folding the laundry or cleaning up that mess that has been sitting there for weeks. And you just now have to go and put all of those things away. So unorganization is a big form of self-sabotage. So there are so many examples. I mean, we could spend the next 5-6 hours talking about examples of how we are sabotaging that progression towards your desired outcome. However, self-sabotage is not always a bad thing. We make it out to be a bad thing because it's the thing that's keeping you from reaching your goals. But there is a purpose for self-sabotage. And when you can recognize, okay, I am self-sabotaging. What is it that I need to do differently to help me be able to reach those goals, to reach that desired outcome? And then we're able to come up with a plan. There is an opposite to everything that you experience. And that's very intentional because we do not experience growth through remaining comfortable. We experience growth through opposition. You experience self-sabotage because there's an area that you need to grow in. So where I used to live before my family went and traveled around the United States, there was a canyon that came out of the mountain and it was always windy. It would blow, I swear, like 98% of the time. It was always, always, always windy. Where the trees in this canyon would always lean away from the canyon because the winds would come down and it would push those trees. So they would grow on a diagonal angle because they were under constant pressure from this wind. Now, when a tree grows like that, when it is under constant opposition, the roots actually grow stronger because of that constant wind. That tree that is grown under constant pressure is 150 times stronger than a tree that has no opposition. Both trees are growing, and they're growing upwards the best that they can. But the tree that is under constant pressure has 150 times stronger roots than the tree that doesn't have any of that pressure. So when the pressures of life do come and we all face them, which tree do you think is going to be stronger to withstand those stronger opposition, that stronger pressure, that trials of life? When you go through opposition and you don't allow yourself to shrink back because of that self-sabotage, you actually get stronger. So there's a purpose for self-sabotage. You have to have the skills and the tools to know when you are self-sabotaging and what to do differently so that you can become stronger from that experience. Every experience that you go through is for your good because you become stronger because of it. Every day you have an opportunity to choose between, do I stay in a place where I'm safe and secure and I know what's going on? This is my comfort zone. I don't want to step out of that. Or do I face the opposition that is being placed in front of me? Do I have that uncomfortable conversation? Do I recognize that my current situation isn't exactly what I want it to be, but I'm grateful for it anyway? Because when you express gratitude for what you have and move forward towards what it is that you want. That's how we exercise faith. And that's how we step into the darkness, into the unknown, and say, do you know what? God's got me. I know all of this is going to be working for my good. And all of this opposition that I have faced since I was a young child, it's all helping me be stronger. So when we start to notice that self-sabotage, when we start to see, wait a minute, I made that commitment to myself and I'm not following through, or I had those dreams and now a year later, I'm still not living that life that I wanted to. Start to go back and say, where is it that that opposition got really hard? Where is it that I allowed myself to believe I couldn't do this? Where you put your focus is what's going to determine your outcome. We have resistance in everything. That's the opposition that's intentional. Resistance is happening in your life for a reason. And when we focus on all of the bad things, when we focus on that self-sabotage, all the ways that you're procrastinating, when we focus on the opposition, you are choosing into security. You're playing small and you're not moving forward. You're choosing in to staying the same. You're choosing more opposition. And just because you step outside of your comfort zone once doesn't mean that that self-sabotage is going to go away, because now you're reaching something that is going to trigger more things that say, well, we've never done this before. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to navigate all of this. All of those things are okay because we take it one day at a time. And you start to watch your thoughts. You start to recognize your feelings, because your thoughts, your feelings, and the things that you believe about yourself are dictating your behaviors, how you're showing up in your day. When you take control of those and you start to recognize what is happening inside your brain, now you're able to see how you can start to create a different outcome. You start to say, okay, every time I go to do something on social media, every time I try to talk to someone about what it is that I want to do, every time I talk to my significant other, every time I want to talk to my boss about a raise, every time I do these things, I get so scared and I don't know what to say and my hands get all clammy and I just, my brain stops working. So that is the moment that self-sabotage kicks in. It's in those moments where the opposition is the strongest. Go there and figure out what you need to be strong. Who do you need to be like? Who can you lean on in those circumstances to help you get beyond that moment of opposition? You can do anything for 30 seconds. So lean on someone who's strong in that area to help you through those 30 seconds. Once you open your mouth, things get easier, but you have to be willing to choose into those things that are hard. You have to be willing to choose into that conversation that is uncomfortable, that you don't want to have. You want to bring up something that isn't always safe to talk about, but it needs to happen. You need to show up and choose growth over security. Just because you are choosing into that growth doesn't mean that this self-sabotage is going to go away. It does get easier. The more you choose growth, the easier it is to choose growth. Problem is, you have been choosing security. You've been choosing to stay in the uncomfortable known for so long that choosing growth is a totally new behavior for you. We don't know what that looks like. But the more you choose into growth, the more you choose into, I know that this is hard, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do it anyway, the easier it becomes. It is just simply choosing every day to experience that growth. Now, self-sabotage is a million times easier to see in someone else than in yourself. You can see those patterns. You can see what it is that they're doing. It is so much harder to see it within yourself. The problem is we don't always know what's happening in other people's head. You don't always know what their thoughts are. You don't know what their feelings are unless you're willing to have those conversations. Unless you're willing to open up and to help other people. That's why I asked you to share this episode, because you can see it in other people. When you make that one step, when you say, you know what, I can see that this is something that you may be struggling with, and I know I have it too. Can we help each other? That is what's going to help you be able to make that progress towards the growth that you want, so you can grow into the person that you were always meant to become. The person that doesn't shrink away from opposition. You get to become that person who achieves your desired outcome and knows what it's like to live your dreams.
Don't you love the power of your brain? It is so amazing. If you found this episode helpful in any way, send us a review, give it some stars, and cheer us on. I make a point to read everything that you sent in because, believe it or not, your words are powerful and they make a difference, not only to me, but anyone who stumbles upon this podcast. So thank you for your love and encouragement. And in case you forgot, you're more exceptional than you think. You're stronger and braver than you allow yourself to feel. And what you are contributing right now means more to the people in your life than you will ever know. Today's going to be a great day. So thanks for diving in deep with me. And I'll see you next week on another amazing episode of the Neuro Coach Podcast.